That wasn't supposed to happen, and my green screen is messed up over here. So, yeah, let's run that intro. Everything is messed up. Still messing with a lot of stuff, so of course everything is gonna be messed up. Let me unmute ChuBs here. Oh, all right. So I think ChuBs, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Awesome. At least that's working. So I am been messing with everything. So my Stream Elements bot is running. That's good news. That's really good news. What's up, everybody? What is up, you heathens and demons, you sinners and saints, you beautiful, blasphemous bastards? I'm excited. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot tonight. ChuBs is here. First time that he's been on the channel, but he's been a long time viewer. So I'm going to let him talk about it and talk about why he's here and what we're going to be talking about tonight. We got about an hour. What's up, Rational Canadian Atheist? Yeah, a little earlier than usual on Thursdays, and hopefully everything is going to run just perfectly. And now that I know that my bot is running, I can really work on that. So, what's up, ChuBs? Yeah, you contacted me and you wanted to have a conversation about Bigfoot. So, like, tell us about like your involvement with Bigfoot and yeah, we'll start there, I guess.
Okay. Well, one of the I've been in, the cryptozoology thing for a long time. I love the outdoors. That's how they connected. But in the world of cryptozoology, there's there's always been the talk of how the First Nations people have a lot of the answers, but it's well known that they just don't talk to outsiders. And it wasn't until like the Finding Bigfoot show came in that some of them opened up a little bit and started to tell some of the stories. But like the reason I contacted you is because you might have a little bit of info to help me out. Like some of the most like Bigfoot came into the world as we know it, like in the late 50s and 60s. But if you were to come, like I'm on a show called the Swatchable Podcast on Saturdays, and one of the things that we go back to, no matter what we talk about in current time, is that the stories of the First Nations people. And one of the big things is that all of the different First Nations people, be it the Cherokee and down here where I'm in Louisiana, the Homa Indians. Guy who helps me on my channel is half Cherokee, and none of these people spoke the same languages, but they all have the same stories about a hairy beast that lives in the mountains or in the forest. Now, some of them are kind of a tale of don't go in the forest in the dark, but some are very intricate. Like there's a female Bigfoot called the Jinnequa, I think it is, that carries a basket on her back and will kidnap small children who get loose in the forest.
Hmm.
But those are the kind of things I wanted to ask you. Did you ever hear or were told stories like that?
Yeah, the Tuniqua is how we pronounce it on the reservation, and I only have like a very mild understanding of the Cherokee language, and I'm not even sure if that's Cherokee, but that's how they pronounce the wild woman of the woods, is how it translates. And yeah, like a lot of tribes have different traditions. I had heard the Cherokee tradition, which is kind of along the lines of the Lakota. Bigfoot wasn't really a monster type figure. It was they considered it like an elder, like a big brother, that you gave it respect. But a lot of tribes had traditions where Bigfoot was a monster. Like let me see, I got some of it written down because I had to actually look up other tribes, and I looked into this a little bit. I've been messing with my bot stuff and changing everything, so I didn't get into it as much as I wanted to. But Balks, is what the northern tribes call them, and they're hairy wild men of the forest, and they're dangerous. They may eat men or molest women, and I think that's involved in a lot of modern day sightings of Bigfoot as well. When Bigfoot when it's seen by people, and I haven't, just to put it out there, I'm not, I'm kind of agnostic on Bigfoot, like I'm agnostic on aliens. I think there's more information that needs to be out there. I find it improbable that a creature, which, if it's of this world, because there's a lot of theories about Bigfoot, and we'll get into some of those, I guess, hopefully later, the whole alien connection. But if it's natural of this world, I would assume that it's probably another hominid that survived, maybe wasn't completely wiped out by us, and has done a really good job of hiding itself. And, there's still some uninhabited areas of the world, and a lot of those in this country would be like Native American reservations. So as I was looking into it, I was interested to see that a lot of Native Americans actually still do believe and have these traditions. But I always kind of put them with, because I don't know if you've ever heard of the Skinwalkers.
Oh yeah.
But I always kind of put it in like with that, like, they're traditions. They're like boogeyman traditions. They're stories to tell your children to keep them in line, and not go out at night, and stuff like that. So yes, I have definitely heard traditions of Bigfoot, but I'm agnostic on it, and I definitely probably don't get into more of the mythical side of some of that Native American lore. When it comes to like skinwalkers, I think some tribes actually think that Bigfoot is something like we might evolve into, or some kind of like godlike creature. So yeah, I don't really get into it that much, but I've definitely heard of it, and I'm really surprised to find out that it appears that natives are really big into Bigfoot now.
There's pretty much two camps when it comes to Bigfoot now. One is more on we think it's the missing link between the humans and the apes, or the other side, which is called the woo, which is like they come out of portals. But there are Native American stories about how they walk through two worlds, and they can just walk into the trees. Now we can't, go ahead and prove that.
I did hear that Native American story. I heard it online today, and I heard it in person a long time ago. And that story goes, it's along the lines that we exist in a parallel world. There's two parallel worlds, but the other one is in a different dimension than we're in. And that these Bigfoot have the ability to leave that world, because they live on that world, and enter this dimension for a time, but they have to go back.
Right.
And there are Native American traditions of weak places, weak spots in the world. Stephen King really incorporated this into a lot of his writing, but weak spots that are supposedly doorways into that other dimension.
Yeah, you can get into ley lines and all that stuff, but now some of the most interesting stuff to us in the crypto world is like in California, there's a rock. It's 10,000-year-old cave drawings, and it's clearly a hairy man. And that's what they call it. And whoever the Native Americans were in that area at that time had to have drawn it. But to us, some of the things that have lasted, like on the totem poles, they put actual animals like, whales and wolves, birds, but there's usually a hairy man face on almost every totem pole, and that's what they call it. And we would say, why would they go through the trouble of putting real animals and then that one? But that's another thing.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the reasons why I'm still agnostic to it, is because, for one, all the sightings, I think technology has brought people together, and now people can really relate stories. So we have sightings from all over the world, really, in these really remote areas. But also, there's that, but there's the Native American lore here in this country that has never really went away. It is one of the traditions that they held on to, and it's something that a lot of Native Americans still believe in. So, I don't want to sit here and say, well, as I drop my vape machine, I don't want to sit here and say, well, I know for a fact that there is no Bigfoot, or it's not possible that a hominid species did survive. and has been able to you know keep out of our sight. But at the same time, it's not impossible. So yeah, I'm kind of there. I know I used to get into Bigfoot a lot. Like when I was on the reservation, that's when I probably read a lot of books on Bigfoot. Not sure if it was related to what I was hearing from them or just if I was interested in it.
Well, one of the kind of options for mistaken Bigfoot, and this is like the reason I wanted to ask you is, they speak about how shamans of each tribe would have kind of a walkabout and would, go in the woods for years at a time, you know, not, he wouldn't shave, grow his hair out, put like, the skin of a wolf over his head. And that might be the mistaken identity. Like somebody sees a hairy man, but it just could be the shaman. Do they still do that? Like the shamans go out?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of tribes do like that is one of the things that in becoming a medicine person or a shaman, that a lot of tribes still do is they will have a walkabout. I don't think that they go full wild like that, but I definitely think that could be a possibility. I think it could be a lot of possibilities. Like I said, nighttime stories, but it also could be wild animals that are just mistaken, I guess would be the thing.
Yeah.
But again, when you actually look into it, there's thousands, if not millions, of people all over the world that have reported these sightings. And it's kind of like with UFOs. I've always been, well, I would say that I was probably really atheistic to the idea, or that's a bad word to use for this, but to the idea of UFOs. But I slowly became agnostic to it just because like it seems like a lot of governments now are releasing information that at least implies that it's a possibility. So like I think information can change. I think that I would side with you. Like if Bigfoot exists, I think that it would be a natural thing. It would be a hominid, and maybe it would be that actual missing link that we did nearly wipe out, and that the only way that they could have possibly survived is to stay away from us and be very good at it. So I think that would be probably the only scenario that I think that it's likely that it's true.
Yeah, it's very surprising. Like if you like we go through the reports, and I am on the more like skeptical-ish side when it comes to Bigfoot, where like you said, I believe it could be. We look in personally, but there's tens of thousands of reports almost every year, and you're talking doctors and lawyers and policemen, and that brings me to my next point. There was a big report not too long ago. It was on a reservation, and it was from like the police chief of the reservation who had an infrared or nighttime scope. But that's another thing. Do the reservations, they have their own police, right?
Yes, most of them do. I think some tribes. Well, I think if it's an actual reservation, that would be sovereign native land, and they would have their own police force.
See, that's the thing. Again, it started to open up in the modern culture where these police chiefs would come and talk to us, and they never did before. It was very hush hush. There's a Finding Bigfoot episode where they go to Florida to the Seminoles, and they let them in the tents with them and their teepee huts, and they lay it on the line like, yes, we still talk about it. We still hear the noises. People do disappear. But yeah, we take it in where I come. Let's just look at it. And it's funny. It's very close to religious. You're taking the word of people. And, but the thing is, we still find footprints and hair, and things are being tested. And we are DNA testing scat sometimes, and they're coming back unknown. And it's really intriguing right now. Like, we record calls of animals, and some are just a human pitch, but you can tell it's not a human. But we still go back to the Native Americans. Like, I'm really impressed to look at how they all spoke a different language, but they all had the same stories. Like, none of them traded with each other. Some did, obviously, but and you're up north. And that peninsula is a very big hotspot, that Michigan peninsula into the lakes. and but you can come down here like in Louisiana and the story is still the same. And
Mm.
that's kind of the amazing part to me. But um, just the fact that you've heard the stories too, but then again, it could just be a story where, it's don't go out in the woods, but drawings
Yeah.
from each tribe, you'll see a hairy person with a basket on their back. And I don't know where the stealing the children came from, but um, I guess that's a big thing. Like that, they really didn't talk to each other, did they? The different tribes.
Um, some did, but it was usually regional. And you're exactly right. There were, um, pretty much, as far as I know, almost all tribes had some kind of version of this story. And I guess it would be possible if you consider if they brought the story with them when they came to the Americas. But that they would evolve into their societies and have different variations of it, and I think that would probably be the most likely scenario. I've studied a lot about how they came here, and the most popular theory is that they came here over the land bridge when it was exposed, and got caught in an ice age on that land bridge, and it was a very it was a very rare event to where they were able to evolve separately from the rest of mankind, and that's why they're somewhat different than the rest, I guess. So yeah, I think that it's possible that maybe it was an old story that they brought with them from Asia, because we do know that Asia itself has its own version of the Bigfoot. So it's very possible that they brought it with them.
Every continent has a different name, a
Yeah.
different version, and that land bridge. One of the ones they look into is it's called Gigantopithecus blacki, and the reason they looking into that is they found the jawbone in a cave in China, and when they reconstructed it from there, it would be over 10 feet, 11 feet tall, and that's just one example of what could have came over the land bridge. And but you're also talking like the Bigfoot you see like in commercials now and the Patterson Gimlin film from back in the day. That's like the Pacific Northwest. Where I'm from, they call them skunk apes. They're seen to be smaller, and then the yowies in Australia are different size. It's really intriguing that it's not just one story or one type. And many hunters who have seen them don't shoot because they say when they look through their scopes, it's a human face, and they just can't do it. And that's kind of the way it comes back to the Native Americans treated it like just another person. And some of the stories are, well, that's just a hairy tribe that lives over there, and like it was normal. Like
Yeah, there was the Bush Indians that were a tribe of very hairy, big men, and they were often considered aggressive. I think that this was up in Alaska, maybe, that they had that lore, and I think you might even be able to find a little bit of like Bush Indian lore down in the Plains Indians, but don't quote me on that. But I think you might. Yeah,
well, I mean that
those were interesting stories when I was reading about the Bush Indians. That was a long time ago. But if you ever look into the Bush Indians lore, it's fascinating.
yeah, that's just an example of how you can take it. Like we try and take it on our side. Like it's a mixture of just it could be a tribe like that, and there's several of them, and they've just never integrated with the modern world, and they look different from us. But some people do see, or they claim to see. Let me make sure I say that, like completely covered in hair, except for the face, hairy creatures. And like I said, the reports come from every situation. Be it a doctor or a lawyer, somebody who can actually, almost lose their job from coming out from this. And it's only been in the last 10 years. And TV helped a lot, like the TV shows you might see, which, I mean, they don't help that much. But people started to come out and talk about it. And like I said, it was like a Finding Bigfoot show where they let them into one of the reservations, and they wouldn't let the cameras in, obviously, all the way. But the stories were the same. And like I said, the fact that like you can take a picture of a totem pole from the East Coast and the West Coast, and they'll have normal animals, but always a hairy face on that. You
Yeah,
know,
and totem poles. It's really been. I actually used to carve them, spend months and months and months carving them. We'd carve little ones and the big ones. So I don't want to get this wrong and have a natives hear what I'm about to say and put me on blast because it's been so long. But I do think that the majority of them were natural creatures, but then they also did include godlike creatures. So you could have like a Bigfoot creature on a totem pole, or the Thunderbird would be another one. They had representations of eagle, but they also had representations of Thunderbird, which was a mythical, godlike being. I guess would be it. It was like a bird spirit, but it was godlike. So I mean, but I don't want to. I hope I'm not wrong about that, or butchering that, or putting that into the wrong context, or to say that Bigfoot is equal to Thunderbird, because there were definitely tribes and still are people that do believe in it. And I get from looking into it just a little bit since you approached me about this, I see like the Native Americans are like a leader in this new community that has seemed to form since that show, Hunting Bigfoot or whatever it was that came out.
yeah, they really helped a lot because that's where I first heard that, like, if a reservation is not going to just let you in, you need to really know somebody who can help you get in. And even then, like, the elders were the ones who knew the stories, and they might have passed it on, but they knew it the most, and it was really hard to get in there and tell it. And like I said, they had their own police force, and some of those police chiefs came out after a while, but not many. And it's still a little hush hush. And like they tell us in the Bigfoot world, like you just can't go wander onto the reservation, knock on the door, and ask. But the stories still come out from the reservations where, yeah, the big hairy man comes to the reservation at night and will steal food, or knock over the garbage can. So we look at that as like, why would they go through the trouble of lying about that? Like, there's nothing to gain from anybody making it. You're not going to make any money. You're not going to do anything. And
that is another argument. Like a lot of people will say that it could have been a bear or just a big animal like that. But when you're talking about Native American peoples who are attuned with Earth, and not all of them are, like, I mean, the reason most tribes won't let cameras into the reservation is because they don't want you to see the poverty and the alcoholism and the drug abuse. So, but there's still an element that holds to the old ways, and yeah, so these would be people that would understand the difference between a bear and something else. Now, not to say that they're not mistaking something for the Bigfoot, but I do find it peculiar that, if you go on the reservations, a lot of them are still trying to live that red road, trying to be attuned with nature, trying to be attuned with the earth, and a lot of them still do believe in these stories. A lot of them don't, though. A lot of them think that the story, it's kind of like Christianity almost in a way. Like, you have some Christians that take it literally, and then some Christians that think it's more like metaphorical. There's a lot of native tribes people and elders, and they say that all of that was metaphorical. I can't remember the name of the creature, but there was like a small version of the Bigfoot, and these are considered like tricksters. You'd get lost in the wood for days, and they'd wait until you're desperate, and they try to trick you with their spirit food. And once you ate their spirit food, they would know that they have you. And elders think that's like a metaphor for like drug dealers now, and drug addiction and alcohol and vices that human beings have. So I'm an atheist. I don't believe in the supernatural, so I tend to side more with logical explanations for things. But at the same time, again, I'm agnostic on this because I think that it is somewhat possible, if not, I don't think it's probable, but somewhat possible that an old hominid did survive and has just managed to stay the fuck away from us. It's probably getting harder and harder, because we are creeping into those areas. There's less and less uninhabited areas of the world.
Yeah, the encroachment is real. It's funny, like you had just mentioned about the Trickster. There are many stories that come out now about how people go in the woods and they hear whistles and wood knocks, and it always seems like they're dragging, not dragging, but luring people further deeper in the woods. So you get lost and stuff like that. So the stories are almost the same, and that's the
Yeah.
fascinating part.
Well, and
But
I find it interesting, and this could be like the other side of social media. So I spoke about how like social media is making it possible for people to share stories, but the other side of social media is it makes it possible for people to hear thing and go along with the story. So
yes,
but I do find it strange that almost everybody that actually hunts Bigfoot kind of report the same kind of experiences. And the knocking is the one thing that seems to be consistent with all of them.
yeah, yeah, because our modern gorillas still do that, and it's like a way for them to say, "Here, I'm over here."
Yep.
And people are hearing that in the middle of the United States, and it's like, well, what else? What else can pick up a wood, stick and do that? And it's got to be loud enough to travel. So yeah, there's, social media, like you said, it's good and bad. Like what we do on our little podcast is we take the videos that are coming out, examine them, and give them a thumbs up, a thumbs down, because there's a million hoaxes. But the big saying in the Bigfoot world is, okay, you got 10,000 eyewitness reports. All it takes is one to be real, and you have something to grow on. And like I said, the key to Bigfoot is there's no copyright to Bigfoot. You can do anything you want with it until it's actually discovered, if you will, or found. That's why you see a beef jerky commercial or insurance commercial with a really good Bigfoot outfit. And I have one of my youngest son, he knows what that is from just TV, and it's on cartoons. But
I grew up with Harry and the Hendersons. There was the movie, and then they had the I think 1 or 2 seasons of the series, and that was like my shit.
Yeah, yeah, that did a good job of showing, like, because if you go look up Bigfoot movies, 99% is a horror aspect, like they're mean and will rip you apart. But there's currently only maybe 1 or 2 reports out of 10,000 of them being mean. Now, we're not saying go up and shake one's hand or anything, but there's no like reports of, oh, they tried to kill me and such. There's actually reports of people who one guy was in a canoe, his canoe tipped over, and one pulled him out, this is his report, pulled him out of the water to save his life. So Harry and Henderson is a really good one to watch because it's fun and interesting. It did a good job of showing, like, there is hysteria with it, but if you go deep into the reports, it's not really a mean, but there's also a problem. Some of the people in the Bigfoot community call them the forest people and go out of their way to say they mind speak to them, and they're very helpful. And then it goes off the rails. Let me just say, where some people say they come from other planets, yes, and turn into orbs, and like UFOs, put them on here. Like Earth is a prison planet, but I'm not in the woo camp. But
I was looking at that earlier today, and I don't know, there could be some correlation, and if there are aliens, I think that it'd be foolish of us to assume that like there's only one kind, there's only the gray, or
right.
If you've ever gotten into the conspiracy theories, the reptilian men are my favorite. But it's possible that aliens are humanoid and even ape-like us. It's possible, but again, I find that highly improbable. And I think it is that little niche field of ufology, whatever they call themselves, trying to really make something that's not there.
Yeah, ufologists. They're. It's funny. We see in our little atheist community, there's so much fighting, even infighting. If you come to the Bigfoot community, people are ruthless. It's so similar, because somebody will put up a picture or a video, and they'll just get torn apart by people and called names. And it's really like when I watch anything we do in the atheist side, I'm like, oh my God, it's so close. But you're still dealing with the same facts of people who are believing what an eyewitness statement is. That for some it's Jesus, for the other side it's I saw something in the woods. And at the same time, like we still have people finding footprints and casting them, and people are studying. There are casts of footprints with dermal ridges, like fingerprints, in them, and that's kind of hard to pull off if you're going to try and hoax somebody. So those are the kind of reports we take seriously. But yeah, some of the reservation stories are that they do walk between two worlds, and that's why we can't catch one, or they can cloak. There's a big people side of people that say they can, almost like the Predator in the movie, and First Nations people and regular people now alike say that's how they're not being caught by us, and they're not on trail cams, and everybody has a camera on their phone. Why don't we get anything? Well, you got to be in the right spot. You got to be in the right area. But like I was telling you, they call it the peninsula, where Michigan is like the northest to the lakes, and many sightings still come out of there because it's a lot of hunting, and
I've been up to the Upper Peninsula a few times. It's a different world up there. Anybody, like, if you want to go back to the wild, I think that's probably one of your best chances to really do so. And I don't recommend getting off the roads because you'll get lost and you'll probably die. But it is a different world up there. And yeah, you go up there, you have Sasquatch stores. I mean, it's the industry up there. That's all they talk about is Bigfoot.
Yeah, they have many states have, museums, Bigfoot, and stores and books. There's a million books, and some of the authors are really, really straight arrow people. But yeah, like we tend to listen more to the people who like hunt in those areas, and that's how, when people say, well, how can it stay unhidden, or we can't find it, like you said, like you can just drive right out of some cities and you're in the middle of nowhere. So it's not that hard to figure out, but then you got to talk about, well, how does a population survive? They can't be just one. But people report juvenile Sasquatch, 3 feet tall, because they have to be babies at some point, and females with, like, you can see the breast, and that's the stories we kind of like. Why would people go through the trouble? Like the famous Patterson Gimlin film, it's a female in the video, if you believe it or not. But to this day, those reports are still there. And I just wanted to tell you, they still have reports of thunderbirds, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I know the stories. Like First Nations people say that was the bird that would precede a storm, and their flapping made the thunder. But the thunderbird in the cryptozoology world, it's almost like a condor or a golden eagle, in real terms. But they're big enough to pick up little children, and have, by reports. You're talking a 12-foot wingspan. So they're not the same as the First Nations, but that's where they kind of stole the word from there, because a lot of totem poles, that's what's at the top, is the big wings.
Yeah.
So I think the name kind of caught on from there. So yeah, if you've been to the peninsula, you can see it's not hard to just be woods, or anybody who's flown on a plane, you can just look out the window. I've been to Chicago. It's really like you can just be over woods for an hour in a plane.
I mean, it's a really interesting thought experiment, I think, to think about what it would take for a hominid species that we had tried to eradicate. I mean, I'm not going to say that we eradicated all of the other hominids, but I think I think that definitely happened, as we wiped out a lot of the other hominids. But in order to escape that, I think you would have to evolve in a way to be able, maybe sharper senses than us, maybe be able to hear us coming, be able to see farther. I don't know. I just thinking off of the top of my head, what it would take for a hominid species to be able to live in these uninhabited areas and survive, and really, I mean, and with all the technology in the world now, we don't really have any real legitimate video capturings. I think, and it's really easy to look at a video capturing and say, well, that's just fudged. That's just fake. I mean, because it's really easy to fake it. Like I can pretty much do anything here with the equipment that I have, So, but at the same time, you think that with the technology we have and the encroachment we talked about, that's if they're out there, eventually we're gonna find one, and we'll actually capture one, or we'll have legitimate video evidence that's going to be really hard to deny.
Yeah, there's many stories of people who live in rural areas where they have window peekers, as they say. They'll look out the window and see a pair of eyes, but the window is 10 feet off the ground. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's very funny. We don't ever find stories of Sasquatch using tools or fire. And we never find anything like that. But many reports report bioluminescent eyes. Like their eyes looks like they evolved to see almost in the dark like a cat. And when you shine the light on them, you get eye shine. And it's really bright. There's many videos of good eye shine that's really unexplainable. But yeah, like we don't find fire pits. We don't find like a spear or a tool of any kind. So that is, like you said, they might have gone a different way. And that's one of those questions, like even in the religious aspect, like what did the religious people think Neanderthal was, and that we had the bones of everything. That we've heard their side of it, but in this case, we don't have a dead body, and that's one of the main things. Like you can get the best video in the world, and we tell everybody it's good that we do that. But until we have a specimen, it's really not going to do anything. But
yeah, I think I agree with you. Until you actually catch one, either dead or alive, it's just too easy to point the finger at any video footage and say, well, that could be doctored.
Yeah. Now, especially with, like, you can do anything on your cell phone, and, that's what they say. Like, everybody has a cell phone, everybody's out in the woods. How do you not have more? But, like I said, we evaluate on our show all the incoming stuff, and some are hard to explain, and some are by people who will come out and talk about it. And we evaluate everything. That there's a lot of us that.
Oh, it looks like Chubbs, you froze up there. Hopefully his phone didn't go out on him. He said he was using mobile. We still got 20 minutes, so hopefully he'll come back. Interesting conversation. Hopefully he'll come back. Yeah, it looks like maybe he disconnected. So interesting conversation. Oh, there you are. You disconnected out of there for a minute, but you're back now.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, we missed about the last 20 to 30 seconds, maybe.
The last thing I was talking about was when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980. They have many reports of like 2 or 3 size Sasquatch things found, but the government took it away, wildlife and fisheries or whatnot. And that's like something we can't ever get into or find. But some doctors have come out later in the years and said through the 50s to the 80s, they were called by the government to dissect what could only be called the Sasquatch. And doctors are those people where they'd lose their career by telling these stories. So,
well, I think that's another interesting element that I was researching today. Excuse me, stupid vape. But that does seem to be consistent across the board from people that do hunt for Bigfoot all over, is that there does seem to be an element of military involvement against them. And it seems really dominant in New Mexico, and New Mexico is a hotbed for Bigfoot activity, but also for UFO activity. So, and we all know what's in New Mexico and what's out there, and so yeah, I think I found that to be rather odd. That it seems, I mean, just based upon the accounts of people giving their stories, that there is some government involvement here, and I would have to ask the government why, and
right.
And I'm sure they never tell us.
Yeah, there's a couple really hardened researchers that you can see they go videotaping like almost every day, and Black Hawk helicopters will just circle right around them. and they're not
Yeah,
too
that's the
close to any
thing.
bases.
It's like usually black helicopters, pretty much everywhere. It's not just in New Mexico. Everywhere
Right.
they're seeing these black helicopters.
Yeah, Colorado is a very big one where there's a lot of researchers who live in different areas but contact each other. There's a small connectional web where people try and keep in touch, but yeah, some will like filmed unmarked helicopters, and they just stay around them. Now, the only answer we've come up with as if they're keeping it a secret is when there was an owl found, like in the late '80s, the snow horned owl, I think it's called, but it totally demolished the logging industry. So they kind of say that might be what they're worried about. If they come out and say this is real, then you're going to have a problem with people not deforestation trying to fight that. But I will say there are a couple people who actually take their claims and go to government, like to Supreme Court almost, and bring their they want to try and make it an endangered species pretty much. And they have a lot of evidence. And like I said, some you can't deny, like they DNA test hairs they find, and when you look at the hairs, they're not human, they're not animal, and they come up unknown. And that's because we do have a data bank of almost every animal, but if nothing's in there to compare it to, you can't compare it. It comes back unknown. And those are the ones, like the stories we follow, to where that might be something. So somebody who just saw one run in front of their car, we might document it, but no. And just to bring it back, like the Native American people who have come out and started to talk make it so interesting. And for me, it's the fact that, you know, the tribes did not speak the same language, but they had the same stories. Some didn't even like each other, as you know, and there's no reason to make it up, and there's no reason to, like, there's nothing to gain if you're going to come out and say that. And it probably is going to hurt worse. So, but that's like I wanted to ask you, and you said it, and it was great that, like, yeah, these stories have lived on, and like they could be the bedtime stories, but why would each tribe, like, you know, have it in a totem pole or carve it on a rock 10,000 years ago and call it the hairy man? Or, you know, like the Juniqua, like I learned through the investigation that is the female name, and it's it's still used, and
they definitely had females in the Native American tradition. And that's something that you really don't see in pop culture too much. But there was definite females, and I think that when I say definite, there was definitely a tradition of female Sasquatch. So yeah, I think that these are what you're laying out is probably why I'm still agnostic on it. I think that I tend to believe that they were just more bedtime stories, and you know there was trade, so it's possible that the stories did, you know, the trade was more regional, but that region would spread out. So say if the Cherokee is trading with these tribes down here, well, one of the tribes at the top of that region will be trading with tribes north to them. And these stories could escalate and become very popular with keeping children in line, which is something that natives did across the board, is they usually used nature themes as their boogeyman bedtime stories for the children. Everything was pretty much involved around nature with most tribes. Most tribes, their spirituality, their God was all involved with the land that they worked and nurtured. So yeah, I think that I tend to believe that, but then again, I think the things that you lay out are reasons why I just remain agnostic on it. Like I need more information. Sooner or later, they'll either find one, or we'll get to the point to where, like, there's no way they're just escaping our attention, unless there's the other woo side of it, as you were speaking, and we can somehow figure out a way to prove how to get to that other dimension.
yeah.
Know? So
there's so many stories of, like, they turn into orbs and go into the trees, or some that
UFOs.
Some are called the Green Man, and like stories that go back, and basically a Sasquatch, but it looks like moss, and that's how they could just lay down and not be seen. But, you know, we do take it in stride, and because if we believe everything, then there's no point. So we do remain skeptical, but it's getting to the point of there are more people going out. We're finding so much more.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'm very thankful you were able to talk to me because you're honed in on your heritage, and that's something that pushes us where like those stories go back so far,
Oh yeah,
hundreds of
yeah.
years, and
I mean,
they're still here.
possibly. I mean, I think they came over about 10,000 years ago, and I think it's possible that those stories came with them. So you're talking traditions that are 10,000 years old at least.
Yeah, and like the hairy man tribe, like we think of the movie Bigfoot version, but what if there are just hairier, taller, bigger people, and that's what's being seen. But
I think that
we
that's
try.
definitely a part of some of the sightings, at least. I know we had somebody in the chat. I think it was Grumpy Old Dude. What's up, Grumpy Old Dude? Saying his brother's like, 7 foot with a size 14. Like, yeah, that could be a lot of it. A lot of it coming from just really big men, especially when you consider that we get bigger with each generation. So if you're a really short, say you're 6,000 years ago and you're just much shorter than we are now, and you see just an unnaturally tall person like we have now, then yeah, I think that could be some of it. But at the same time, I don't think it's all of it. I think that there's definitely traditions there that go back a long time, and there's also species that we find all the time. We find new species all the time in the remotest parts of the world. So yeah, I definitely think that it's possible. I think that if we ever found one, that would be like the find of the century, especially if they are a hominid that has somehow managed to survive. That would be fascinating. I hope I'm alive to see it if it ever happens.
Yeah. What's funny is there's a large group in the Bigfoot world that think it's the Nephilim. And I've had conversations with like Converse Contender, me and him talked on his channel for like 2 hours, where they think the Nephilim survived and that's who Bigfoot is. Or like Goliath in that story was a Bigfoot type person, like 8 foot tall, hairy man. Even it's a,
I find the Christian angle, like the Nephilim, interesting. Because if it's real, if the Bigfoot are the Nephilim, then God really sucks at killing everybody. I mean, he really sucks at killing everybody.
Well, I can tell you, like I was in a chat on one of the shows, and I said, well, if that's the case, how did they survive the flood? And they literally said, well, if they were giants, they were big enough. And I'm like, that makes no sense, but okay.
They had to be some really big fucking giants.
Right.
Yeah, water covered mountains, so they're bigger than mountains.
Well, they don't. You've probably seen like some of them don't think the mountains were even around or they weren't as high.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it. But no, like I said, I'm in the camp of if it's real, it's probably the missing link. Like we can't find that, and that would kind of destroy a little bit of that transitional fossil thing. But it's got to happen naturally, and I will say, they are working on it. But for me, it's fascinating to go back and like a story from like 100 years ago or 300 years ago is the same as today, and people who know nothing about that story tell the same story. So. Some of that's where we link it up, but oh no. And then I've gotten in arguments where somebody said I had a sighting, and you have to believe me, I'm a God-fearing person. Why would I lie? And I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
That
the things we go through.
Yeah, that doesn't mean much. So when it comes to like the Native American angle of it, I would just say be cautious. I'm not talking bad about my peoples, but their tradition was destroyed. A lot was lost. A lot was forgotten. A lot, I think that sometimes maybe they're grasping and creating as they go. And again, like I would bring you back to the skinwalkers would be my perfect example. I think that as atheists, anybody that believes in a rational world, you can look at the skinwalker story and say, all right, the natives either were being metaphorical or they just made shit up. Because human beings can't change to look like other human beings, can't get into your skin. And a lot of those stories, like you would, if you changed into another human being for too long, you would actually either turn evil or actually adopt their soul and become just like them. So I mean, we look at these things. I think we can look at these things and say, nope, that's not real. But when it comes to the Bigfoot, you're talking more of a natural and a possibility there than you would with the thing like the skinwalkers. So yeah, that would be my advice. I mean, I would definitely listen. I think that there's wisdom in everything. Especially when it comes to the Native Americans, that even if there's usually wisdom there if they're of sound mind. If they're, there's the other problem that Native Americans don't like to talk about, is that a lot of them their brains have been addled by drugs and alcohol. So
Right.
knowing who you're talking to and then trusting that source is going to be important. But yeah, I would say, like, I think that I'm agnostic on it. Like I think that it's fun to think about, and it's like, if you're bored every day, audience, if you're bored and you don't, you can't figure out nothing to do, just look up some Bigfoot shit. You're gonna be entertained, and maybe you'll start hunting in the woods too. As you say, more and more people are doing that. I mean, human beings are getting into these remote areas. And they're looking, and they're getting out in nature. So, I mean, if anything, there's always silver linings. Human beings are getting back out into nature. So I love that.
Especially now with people being unable to go to work, or, like with the pandemic, like there's a big need. Like they said, some of the lines to go into state parks with cars are just backed up for hours, because you can do that and you're not by people. So there is a big thing about that. But as always, be careful. There's mountain lions. And
oh yeah,
bears.
Definitely be careful. And wolves are still a bitch if you're by yourself and you don't have a gun. So.
Yeah, we have red wolves down here. Kind of beautiful.
See, we have coyotes around here up in Michigan. Not too many wolves. I'm sure that they're out there. Probably a lot up in the Upper Peninsula. We call it the UP. Yeah, this was a fascinating discussion, man. I find it an interesting thought experiment, especially on the side, if this was a hominid that somehow survived all these millennia and have stayed distant from us and have been able to hide from us. I find that a very, very interesting idea to explore. So, yeah, I want to appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Do you have anything to show? Like, I can't remember if you have a channel or not.
I do have a channel. It's Colonel ChuBs, and it's entertainment. We talk about movies, and we talk about comic books and stuff like that. But the other thing was Saturdays at 5:00. If you just type in YouTube Squatchable Podcast, that's the show I'm on, where we take videos and reports and dissect them and give a skeptical look. That would be if you look into Bigfoot. My channel, I have a foot in the horror community, and we talk about horror movies, or, like I said, comic books, skateboarding. I just do entertainment, but it's coming along. That's been fun.
Send me a link, and I'll throw it in the description here. And so yeah, if you guys want to check out some more Colonel ChuBs, go check them out. And let me know. I've been fascinated with the conversation. I've seen that while my chat bot is on, it's not really doing anything yet. That's good. That's all right. I didn't really do anything for it to do anything. I just wanted to see if it was finally working as it is. So I'm going to be working on that. But I didn't really get to see too much of what you guys was saying. So it's been taking like 2 or 3 days for me to see the side chat. I will look at the side chat, and if you want to leave a comment, I will try to respond to your comments on this one, because I'm interested in seeing what you guys think about the Bigfoot. Do you think it's a possibility? Do you think it's real? Have you seen a Bigfoot? Let me know in the comment section. Yeah, thank you so much, Colonel ChuBs. So as we get out of here, I'll do like we did when we started. I'll have an outro music that you won't be able to hear, so I'll put you on mute. And then I'll say goodbye once the outro music is done. So, yeah, thank you guys for being here. As always, be the conversation, and I will see you soon.